Even some of the most popular of TV shows don't get a say in how they end. Sometimes the creators are given no notice whatsoever, meaning there's nothing to stop them from building to a huge season-ending cliffhanger only to be told there won't be any more episodes. But just because there are no answers given on screen doesn't mean they can't be found elsewhere, thanks to interviews, social media, and even tie-in merchandise. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with 10 more infuriating TV cliffhangers you didn't realize had answers. Number 10. The Legends Pass the Torch, Legends of Tomorrow. What started with Arrow back in 2012 ultimately grew into the Arrowverse, DC's shared small-screen universe that housed the likes of The Flash, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and Legends of Tomorrow. However, with the wider franchise losing steam after its flagship property finished in 2019, the rest of the shows were ultimately cancelled. Though it may not have been as popular as The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow's end frustrated audiences the most since it ended with such a big question mark looming over it. In the Season 7 finale, the titular team were arrested by the Time Police, while Mike was ultimately revealed to be popular DC hero Booster Gold. The Arrowverse is now officially dead, and the odds of it coming back are slim to none. However, Katie Lotz, who played Sarah Lance, confirmed exactly what was supposed to happen in Season 8. As well as Booster Gold's involvement, much like Arrow's 7th season, Legends of Tomorrow's 8th would have seen the team in jail, Time Jail. They then would have been tasked with retraining as Time Masters, while mentoring the younger cadets in what would have seemingly been something of a passing of the torch. Would it have really been so hard to give the show one more season? And what sounds like it would have been a fun and strong ending. Number 9. Sophie ended up with Sid, How I Met Your Father. In spite of its title, by the time How I Met Your Mother got around to actually revealing the mother of Ted Mosby's kid's identity, nobody really cared anymore. The show was way past its prime, and Ted was arguably the least popular character of the group. Unfortunately, How I Met Your Father didn't get a chance to reveal the father at all. The spin-off was ultimately cancelled after just 2 seasons, leaving fans in the dark over who Hilary Duff's Sophie ultimately ended up with. The options were basically down to Sid or Jesse, with Charlie being ruled out in the Season 2 finale. However, in September 2023, just weeks after its cancellation, a post on X went viral surrounding the identity of the titular father. Apparently, a comedian and former writer for the show was a supporting act for John Mulaney's stand-up gig, and since he had been fired, decided to tell the audience the big reveal. According to this writer, the father of Sophie's kids was, as he put it, quote, the Indian guy, namely Sid. Question answered. Number 8. A time-hopping educational show, Mork and Mindy. TV spin-offs can typically go one of 2 ways. Nobody cared when Joey broke away from Friends back in 2004, while Frasier was arguably better than Cheers. It can be very hit and miss, and it's crazy to think just how many shows spun off from Happy Days. Among the likes of Joni Loves Chachi and Laverne and Shirley was Mork and Mindy, the show that followed Robin Williams' bizarre alien. Even the writers hated the idea of incorporating an extraterrestrial into the Happy Days family, but the character became so popular he scored his own spin-off back in 1978. The show ran for 4 seasons until it was ultimately cancelled on what was a clear setup for a 5th season that never came. After an attack from another alien, the titular husband and wife were left stranded back in time alongside cavemen, with no closure given on whether or not they would have returned home. In speaking with Gizmodo, executive producer Brian Levant revealed that Mork and Mindy wouldn't have gone home, but instead would have hopped around time meeting different historical figures in what would have been a semi-educational show. Semi-educational, and in a complete and utterly different direction from the previous 4 seasons. Number 7. Jack deals with his disability, heals. Though best known for his work as Oliver Queen in Arrow and the wider Arrowverse, Stephen Amell is no stranger to wrestling fans, having made numerous appearances in WWE and played Jack Spade in Heels before it was cancelled after just 2 seasons. What is doubly frustrating is that the 2nd season finale built up to a cliffhanger ending that was clearly going to be referenced in the 3rd season. During his match against his brother Ace, Jack hid a shooting star press against the advice of his father from years before, and subsequently couldn't feel his legs. He was forced to lose the match because he couldn't get up. Though still hopeful for more heels to come, showrunner Mike O'Malley has confirmed that Jack's injury was real and not just a ploy to get his brother to win the match like he wanted. The third season would have heavily revolved around Amel's character coming to terms with his injury, though O'Malley stopped short of divulging the exact extent of it. Now, it is worth noting that Netflix has recently brought the rights to Heel's first 2 seasons, and although it remains cancelled for the time being, there is a slight glimmer of hope that audiences may yet get to watch Jack battle the consequences of his match with Ace for themselves. Number 6. A 3-year alien invasion, Dark Matter. Another in the long line of sci-fi shows that didn't gain enough audience at the time to prevent it from being cancelled, but earned itself a loyal following nonetheless, was Dark Matter. When it was stopped at the end of season 3, there were petitions and calls to action all over the internet, hoping either to reverse the cancellation or at the very least persuade Netflix to pick it up. Would the outcry have been so great had Dark Matter not finished on the cliffhanger it did? Well, it's difficult to say, but it surely had at least some impact as fans wanted to see the story resolved. The third season, in what was originally designed to be a 5-season arc, ended with the crew of the Raza coming face to face with an alien incursion. A whole fleet of spaceships emerged from the depths of space, but there was no closure as to what happened next. However, the series' creator took to his blog to outline what would be a 6-part miniseries to close the book on the story. Essentially, this alien invasion lasted 3 long years and took the lives of billions before anything could have been done about it. The crew members would have had to reunite in order to piece together the technology that could finally defeat the invading aliens in a story that was originally supposed to carry on throughout the entirety of the show's 4th season. Number 5. John and Jane Got Shot, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Rebooting movies in the form of a TV show isn't something that has always seen a success, but you could argue that Amazon Prime's Mr. and Mrs. Smith is better than the 2005 movie with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Of course, there were some key differences to the film, and one of the biggest was multiple assassin couples living under the Mr. and Mrs. Smith alias. One such pair, who worked the highest risk assignments of taking out other Smiths who had failed the organization, were sent to kill the series' main John and Jane. During the big battle in the finale, other John is killed, leaving other Jane to chase our John and Jane, the former whom has a serious bullet wound, to their home's panic room. With John unable to do anything and a Jane either side of the door, our Jane goes on the offensive, and the final image of the season shows 3 gunshots seen from outside the apartment. Though there is no exact confirmation of who fired each shot, there is only one scenario that truly makes sense. The first 2 were obviously the 2 Janes firing at each other, with the third following after a brief pause. If our Jane shot other Jane, there would be no need for a third shot. Likewise, if both of the first 2 shots were accurate, the only reason there would be a third shot would be from other Jane to our John. Well, I don't know about you, but that definitely fried my brain. Number 4. Trapped Under a Siege, Dark Angel. There were some huge names involved in the cult TV series Dark Angel back in the early 2000s, with James Cameron producing and even directing an episode, Jessica Alba portraying Max in what would be her breakout role, and a young Jensen Ackles long before Supernatural fame. Following on from the likes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Xena, and others, people connected with Max as a strong female lead and were devastated when the dystopian future was cancelled after 2 seasons. As is often the case, this left the cliffhanger at the end of season 2 seemingly forever hanging. In the build to the finale, a war was brewing between an ancient race of superhumans and the genetically engineered transgenics like Max, a war that threatened to destroy humankind, and a threat that forced Max and her race to hide in Terminal City, creating their own mini-society. The season and the show ended with Terminal City surrounded by police ready for an invasion. Though not quite the same as seeing the events play out on screen, there have been a number of novels published since that continue the story. Dark Angel's Skin Game picked up immediately after season 2 with the city under heavy siege and a series of murders taking place. Dark Angel After the Dark then explored the wider story of an ancient rivalry between the 2 warring species, with Max ultimately being the key to saving the human race. Number 3. Future Sarah, Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. Thanks to numerous different timelines and time travel elements, the Terminator canon is all over the place. On its own small branch, following on from Terminator 2 Judgment Day, while completely ignoring Rise of the Machines, is the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which created its own popular narrative. As per typical franchise premises, after Sarah and John Connor delayed Judgment Day in T2, Skynet still sent more Terminators back in time to target the young John and to stop him from leading the human revolt in the future. However, in the Season 2 finale, it's John who does the time travelling. In jumping to a post-Judgment Day future, Sarah's son realises that, thanks to his absence from the past, he no longer leads the revolution in the future, and no one there knows who he is. An awesome cliffhanger that could never be followed up on thanks to the show's cancellation. Thomas Dekker, though, has given some idea of what Season 3 would have looked like, in that it's likely he would have found an older version of his mum who survived Judgment Day. So it seems that John would have stuck around in the future, and instead of leaving the revolution himself, would have worked together with Sarah on a different timeline. Essentially, more of the Connors fighting Skynet. Number 2. Martin survived Prodigal Son. By its very nature, a cliffhanger is supposed to be shocking, but there are few as shocking as how Prodigal Son's second season ended. Putting together an FBI profiler with a serial killer father was always going to end in fireworks, and this show did not disappoint. After reluctantly working together to try and find another serial killer, Dr. Martin Whitley, aka the Surgeon, turned on his son Malcolm Bright, though it was ultimately Malcolm who stabbed his father in self-defense. It was explosive, and it left multiple questions wide open about the fates of the two men. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, though trying to keep his cards as close to his chest as possible with the hope of a third season still alive, Prodigal Son co-creator Chris Fedak offered some insight into the aftermath of their coming together. Essentially, he confirmed that Michael Sheen was always planned to be a big part of the show, which strongly suggests that he in fact survived his stabbing, though what would happen to Malcolm is still uncertain. However, it seems that he would be clear of a murder charge at the very least. Number 1. Tony Soprano was killed. The Sopranos. Remember the camera panning up from Walter White's body at the end of Breaking Bad? Jax Teller riding into oncoming traffic to end Sons of Anarchy? Dale Cooper maniacally asking, "How's Annie?" in the Twin Peaks finale. All iconic endings, but none of them come close to the most famous TV ending of all of them. Widely regarded as one of, if not the greatest TV series of all time, The Sopranos gave audiences an incredibly controversial ending with an abrupt cut to black, followed by several seconds of silence. Naturally, this has led to intense debate surrounding what happened next and the ultimate fate of Tony Soprano. Of course, the big question was whether or not Tony died, with there being no shortage of characters with motives and an undeniable feel of tension and unease right up until the very final moment. After 14 years of denying to go into detail about the ending, Sopranos creator David Chase finally confessed that while he never specifically pictured the infamous cut to black, he had the idea of the small restaurant setting for Tony's death some years prior. There's still no details on the specifics of what happened, but TV's most famous mob boss was killed that day to the sound of "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey.